trees back in 2021. I was thinking about, like, if I only had so much time on this planet, what would I spend my time doing? And I thought, save big carbon. Trees are half carbon. They also provide a lot of habitat value, a lot of beauty. And at the same time, there was this sort of super awareness of like, hey, so many of our trees are impacted by vines. And as you drive along highways, which I did a lot more in the COVID time, getting out to all the different nature preserves and state parks and things like that, spending more time in the woods, I had that luxury. And I started realizing that not only was I doing only patch, but most groups were only doing patch. And what do I mean by that? If you have a big piece of property, a park or nature preserve or whatever it was, people tended to focus on one area, maybe the entrance or the areas that were most iconic, and they would spend a lot of time removing every invasive in that area and maybe planting some natives because that's where the water was, doing that type of work. But meanwhile, the forest itself was impacted by vines, specifically bittersweet was the one that I was mostly concerned about at the time. And so I was like, oh, hierarchy of needs. If you only have so much time, again, working on a patch of land, what would you spend your time doing? Well, the most impactful thing was to remove bittersweet off of trees because of the impact of bittersweet. Now we have other vines also that we're thinking about, but this was sort of what I was thinking about. And so you're like, why are we standing here? What's happening with that tree? Where are the rest of the trees in this system? You notice those, sorry, I'm going to talk this way. You notice that there's actually bent over trees all covered by vines. And this is like what's going to be happening to most of our forest all over Connecticut specifically, but up and down the East Coast. And it's all about where there's light, water, and nutrients. The good news is trees suck up light, water, and nutrients. In a healthy ecosystem, we all know this, we walk into a forest, there are not non-native plants or invasives as much there, and the vines aren't there. They all tend to be at the edge of the forest where there's light, water, and nutrients. Take those three things into your mind when you're looking at systems, which this is a system, you'll notice that that's what's happening. So if we can limit two of those three things, or even one of those things, we can get our forest to start coming back. All right, so why are we here in the wintertime doing this? Anybody have an idea? What?
Less vegetation.
Say that again?
Less vegetation.
Less vegetation, right? You can sort of see everything and see what's good and what's bad. So that's a good reason. Other ideas?
You get it before it leaves out in the spring.
Yeah, so we're getting it before it leaves out, but more importantly, it's actually putting energy up into the getting ready to leaf out, and we're cutting it off and helping to starve it, so that's great. Other reasons?
The birds aren't nesting.
The birds aren't nesting. One of my number one reasons, right? My second number one reason is we have time in the wintertime, right? Look at all you coming out at, I mean, many people are probably retired, but life gets really busy in the summertime and the spring. But to be outside on a sunny day like this in the wintertime, amazing. We're all wearing heavy clothes so that the thorns don't bother us as much. So there's a plethora of reasons why to do it in the wintertime, but we're really thinking about leaf off. And most people don't think, but leaf off is really almost 6 months out of the year. We do it basically Thanksgiving to tax day is that window of when you can get in and do this divining work. If you can go back in July into the areas that you previously have done and do a second cut on what you just cut, what you're now doing is starving the enemy. So first, it pushes up everything in the spring, you cut it off, leave a little stub. It'll take the energy from the roots to push out new growth. Now, if that new growth is coming up and there's still some canopy, some competition, less water, it'll struggle. But if it has all three of those things, it'll grow nicely. You're cutting it off again in July, happens to be dry, the sunlight is dissipating, and it's not able to make enough carbohydrates to go back into the root system to help it. So we're trying to really starve root systems. I can say many years when I first started doing this work, even with our community groups, we spent so much time pulling out bittersweet and following the roots and disturbing the soils, and then you go back and there's all these little bittersweets growing up. When we do this method of just cutting and then recutting, there's no resprouting on the ground around there. Those little rootlets aren't regrowing, which is amazing. So it's kind of cool. So there's ways to get success. And so we've had probably over 100 acres in New Haven attended to. And if you want to see success, I can point you to a lot of success, but Edgewood Park, East Rock Park, lots of acreages of success. Friends of Edgewood Park got rid of most of their bittersweet, right?
Woohoo!
Big bittersweet.
Oh, one
Impacting
time,
trees.
right, we came, there's a picture of Chris. It was this big around.
Yeah.
It's like from 8 years ago. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
But it can be done. And so now they got rid of most of their vines, still working on a little bit of the ones that are coming up, but they're working on other invasives that are coming in, such as burning bush. But this whole idea about divining is like, you don't have to know your plants. All you have to know is what is a vine. And then you can get into the woods and then you can start to say, oh, now I can learn this, now I can learn that. We're going to talk about trees today and IDing a couple trees too, and sort of pathways, right? Like everybody needs a gateway tree. Hopefully today you're going to find a gateway tree when we do a little bit of our work.
What's a gateway tree?
So a gateway tree is one tree that you can identify in the woods and impress your friends. Right? And so once you learn one and you read about it and you can talk about it, you're like, oh, I need another one. And I need another one, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about look-alike plants, right? So sometimes there's plants that look similar, and like when we're doing this work. But the most important thing that we're going to do today is I'm going to teach you how to tag. And you're going to tag small trees and what you think might be either native shrubs or native vines. Because there are vines that are good for the environment, right? They co-evolved with our native plants, and so they tend to have hairy vines that stick to the tree. That's a good thing, right? Hairy vines, anybody know what those are?
Yes.
Yeah, we got poison ivy, but also Virginia creeper. If you love cardinals and you want to see more cardinals, you got to have more Virginia creeper, because what do parent birds feed their babies? Caterpillars. Little protein packets that are soft and easy for the babies to eat. They love to get the caterpillars that grow on Virginia creeper, right? So hairy vines that stick to trees. We also have, so we have poison ivy here, we have Virginia creeper, and we have another one that's really more of a southern species, which is trumpet vine, right? And so that can be an aggressive plant. And so we also have these vines that are called aggressive natives. And so those are ones where we're thinking about, like, how is this impacting a tree? And is it something that we should remove? And so aggressive natives, grapevine,
Trumpet.
greenbrier, okay, is a thorny one. We say you can clip any any thorns. You can clip any vines that are not hairy typically, unless we tag them, right? So sometimes a grapevine may be growing on a non-native tree or a dead tree, or playing nicely with an oak. We'll put a pink ribbon on it. So pink ribbon, when you see this around everywhere, pink ribbon means, hey, those are things to save and to watch and to steward. Because we have all these small trees and the little vines, honeysuckle. You can see that evergreen honeysuckle. See all those leaves on those trees?
Yep.
That's all honeysuckle getting up on them. So my wife says, but Chris, I like vines. They're pretty. And I'm like, yeah, some of them are. But when you look at that tree, can anybody tell what that tree is? You're close. It's in the same family. It's an elm. right? And so it's really hard to tell unless you went up to it. But if you went up to it, you'd see these buttressing roots, which is pretty cool. You can go over to that and you can see the buds that are up top. But aren't elms supposed to be these beautiful things that are out like this? Well, what happens is the vines get on there and they ratchet down the lower branches and break them off. They create more sail in the tree so that the trees are more likely to blow over. So when you look around in the forest here, you will see trees that are blown over. You'll see them in here because the vines were on them and they blow that out. But they're also out competing, meaning that they're growing beyond where the leaves are so that the tree can make less photosynthesis, i.e. carbohydrates, sugars to sustain that tree. So, and then they also choke them. And so a lot of times it'll choke, the tree wants to grow, and then you get a wind throw and you get a little snap, or you get an ice or snowstorm and all that weight is breaking down that tree. Elms are very, very strong trees, but that tree needs a little bit of love, right? So what Stephanie wanted us to really do today is think about, we're gonna tag, I wanna teach everybody to go out and look critically in the woods before you do any work, and just put pink ribbons on anything that you think needs saving or that needs work, right? And you can take clippers with you if you got thorns in your way, but we're gonna do everybody's gonna do a practicum of getting into the woods and trying to interpret it. And we're gonna ask questions. There's certain people here like Zach that has a lot of knowledge. Our Edgewood people, Sandy and Stephanie, have some good knowledge. Barbara has some good knowledge. I think some other people may have some knowledge, right? So, and here come a bunch of students that have a bunch of knowledge, just in time, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's the idea, is that we're gonna go through, we put the pink ribbons up, we do the divining, remove it. We wanna clear out a little bit of the area that we're looking at, so then we can do a little bit more on tree ID. Does this all make sense? All right.